Okay, I think I'm live. I'm gonna wait a second and maybe somebody will come in to chat. Probably Matt or Frog. Um, but I'm gonna stream another reading of this book and hopefully all goes well. We shall see. I'm knitting a hat. My first hat was too small. We're back. Hello, Matthew. So yeah, basically my last stream for this book cut off abruptly. Yeah, hopefully no strike. I don't know. Bash really seems to think that it flagged me for being a kid or maybe talking about kids. I'm not really sure, but I guess I do look kind of young, especially like in this camera. Like it makes me look really young too. I think that like in real life I look closer to my age. Hey babe, are you going to bed? He's on his phone. He didn't pay attention to me. He probably didn't even hear. Um he probably didn't even hear me speak. He's walking around on his phone. So yeah, I was going to read at least another story. That's about how much we got through the last stream. It's the hairstyle. Yeah. It's short. I'm growing it out, kind of. We'll see. I don't know. Part of me kind of wants to cut the back off of my hair and have kind of like a pixie cut again, but I don't know. It's getting hot out and my hair is really thick and it's kind of like a pain in the butt when it's like hot because it gets so hot up here in Michigan. Like, I mean, sometimes we get into the 90s and I know other places get hotter, but that's just too much for me. I don't like summer. I'm like a winter kind of person, and the bugs get really bad because everywhere is like a bog. And yeah, I don't know. It's like humid up here. Sometimes it's dry too, though. Our like weather is very um I don't know. Finicky weather. So the last story that we were reading was the second story in the book, the Benton County monster snake. I'm gonna restart because I think that I don't really know. I didn't like rewatch the video, but so I really don't know how long we got. But we're gonna start from here. So we're reading Monsters of the Midwest by Jessica Freeberg and Natalie Fowler. True tales of Bigfoot, werewolves, and other legendary creatures. And it's a softcover book because I bend my books. I break them. I break their spines. I can't help it. And this is the artwork for the little section that we're going to read. So some of them have artwork and some of them don't. And that's that. So yeah, Benton County Monster Snake. Logansport, Indiana, September 1889. There wasn't much remarkable about that afternoon. The wind blew gently, rustling through the leaves that shaded the gentleman from the sun as he made his way toward home. He passed the cemetery west of Oxford, and something drew his attention. To the rows of headstones that marked the final resting spots of Oxford's former citizens. Let me know if I'm talking too quiet, too. I'm trying to be a little quiet because I'm out where, like, my record player and my plants are and stuff. And it's, like, kind of the dining room area of the house, and my mom's sleeping, so I'm trying to not, like, wake her up. He wasn't sure if it was the sound that made him look, or if he caught a glimpse of movement. But there it was, a 15-foot-long, scale-covered serpent slithering in between the headstones, its belly pressing a path through the grass. Volume is fine? Cool. For whatever reason, the man turned to face the snake that slowly, steadily moved towards him. The hair on the back of the man's neck prickled, and his heart nearly stopped as surely as his feet had. Lord Almighty, the man gasped. His voice quivered with terror. The creature was only a few yards away, and it seemed to be picking up speed. Desperately, the man looked around, fearing that the snake would reach him. Within arm's reach, he saw a large stick. Keeping one eye on the slithering monster, he grabbed the stick and held it in front of him. The serpent began to move toward him even faster. Looking from the stick to the snake, he feared his stick would be no match for the monstrous serpent. He instead turned and ran towards his house. His legs had never moved so quickly. He burst through the door of his home, slamming it shut behind him, his back pressed against it as he wheezed in jagged breaths. "What on earth?" His wife stared at him, eyes wide. "Nothing," he replied, trying to steady his breath. The woman raised her brows in suspicion. "Nothing? Look at yourself. You can hardly catch a breath." "I was just—" The man moved to the window and looked out, unable to think of a good reason why he had entered the house in such a panic. "Was someone after you?" she asked worriedly. The man said nothing, but he stared out the window, his body still shaking with fear. "You can't come into this house like you're running for your life and tell me there's nothing going on. Tell me what's got you so shaken." "In the graveyard," he began. "The snake." He spread his arms as far apart as they would go before putting his hands on his knees. He again tried to steady his breath. "You saw the ghoul snake?" his wife asked in a whisper, her jaw dropping in the mix of awe and horror. "It was as wide around as a stovepipe and longer than any two men placed head to toe." He shuddered. "It was coming at me, staring at me, with eyes that looked like flames of a fire, and it had two horns, one on each side of its head, at least 10 inches long." "It was coming after you?" His wife hurried to his side and glanced out the window. "Did it follow you home?" "No. I mean, I'm not sure, but I don't think so. I was running too hard to look back." "You need to tell the sheriff." After gathering a group of townsmen, the sheriff, along with the man who reported the sighting, headed towards the cemetery. "Hi, Aiden. We're reading a book about a big snake, I think. Or a short story, rather." "You're not the first to report this thing," the sheriff assured the man. "I've had at least a dozen others come to me in the last 2 years, always the graveyard." "Makes you wonder how a snake around these parts could get so large," one of the men in the group noted. As they walked through the cemetery gates, the men scanned the area for the creature. "Look at that hole there," one man said. "There's another over there," a second one called out. They found a series of large holes leading into the ground around the tombstones. "I think we've solved the mystery of how a snake could grow so large," one of the men said with a shudder. "That blasted beast is feeding on the poor souls buried here." That's the end of that story. That one's really short. The next one, we're off to a good start, guys, because that one wasn't very scary and it didn't have bad words in it, I guess. The next one is called The Vampire of Nebraska, which I love vampires. That was really short and it didn't have a lot of information. It was an older story, though. I mean, what year did it say it was? 1889. This one's from the 1800s as well, the 1890s. The Vampire of Nebraska, Dawas County, Nebraska, mid-December 1895. Jack Lewis. I think the first guy's name in the story, or in the first story, was Jack too. That's funny. Yeah, so in the acknowledgments, she said that there is stories from like newspaper clippings and people themselves, and yeah, they like went to like libraries and stuff to like look at stuff. Yeah, that's kind of what it said at the beginning of the book. In the first video, the first part that I read, the acknowledgments kind of, I think, says where they got these. So they're like, I don't know, word of mouth stories or reports. I'm not really sure. It's just a book I got at one of our local Michigan stores, because we have like a bunch of Michigan themed stores. Jack Lewis tipped the collar of his coat up and pulled his hat down against the wind, which rolled across the prairie and seemed to catch the edge of the gully. He turned in his saddle and glanced back at the roaring campfire. Cookie hung a pot over the fire, and Jack's belly growled at the sight. The others were setting up camp for the night. He'd be back in a minute. He just needed to be alone for a bit first. "Don't go wandering too far, you hear?" shouted his boss. "Remember that cow we found?" "Yes, sir," Jack answered. How could he forget? It was a scene like no other. Just this morning they'd come across a heifer. Her throat was torn open, and blood had spewed all over the fresh snow. For the rest of his life, he would remember the contrast of the bright red blood against the white snow. His hand instinctively felt for his Colt 45. The worst part about the morning was listening to Charles talk about the mutilated animal for the rest of the ride. This was the first time he'd ever ridden with Charles, and he hoped it would be the last. The man talked about everything all the time, but today he talked about blood and mangled cows and how he'd seen a monster madman attack one of them. He told them about how the man would knock the creature to the ground and bite and claw at its throat, using incredible strength. After that, the madman would drink his poor victim's blood. Jack shivered all the way to his toes, and it wasn't because of the December prairie wind. He eased himself out of his saddle and down to the ground. He'd be wise to get back to the others quickly, but he needed a few quiet moments away from Charles' endless chatter. Besides, it wasn't dark yet, and he had his gun. He'd just take a minute or two alone and then head back to the camp. Jack kicked at the ground and saw a footprint in the snow in the light of the setting sun. He bent to take a closer look. From behind he heard a branch crack. He spun around and found himself face to face with a man whose eyes were wilder than a rabid raccoon's. The man seemed to be foaming from the mouth, which was upturned in a slight menacing smile. Before Jack could process what was happening, the strange man lunged and began to claw at Jack's neck. Jack instinctively tried to push him off, but the man attacked with such ferocity that Jack was no match. As the beastly attacker alternated between choking and clawing wildly at his throat, Jack drew his gun from his holster. Unable to take aim, he fired off 2 rounds into the ground, hoping to draw the attention of other men at the camp. Jack could hear the sounds of feet pounding against the snow and twigs snapping under boots. His comrades rushed to a sight that most certainly shocked them. By the time they arrived, the vampire had begun to use his teeth on Jack's throat, as if trying to suck his blood. Jack thrashed wildly beneath the creature, but despite its slim frame, the beast seemed to wield an otherworldly strength that left Jack defenseless. Hearing the shouts of others, the vampire leapt from his victim and dashed behind the trees. "Jack!" His boss stood above him and quickly pressed the handkerchief against the wounded neck. Others approached, but Jack's boss shouted, "Go after that thing!" They scrambled to do as they were ordered. The boss pulled the handkerchief away from Jack's neck. "He got you good, but they're not too deep. You're gonna be fine." After getting Jack back to the fire, his boss used some boiled water to clean Jack's wounds. Cookie wrapped up the gnarled neck in clean dressings that he kept in his knapsack, along with a skin of whiskey. He called that knapsack his doctoring kit. As the shock began to wear off, Jack felt an aching that burned in the wounds around his throat and face. He took a long swig from the skin of the whiskey. The sound of hooves coming closer made Jack jump. Cookie put his hand gently on Jack's shoulder. "It's just our guys coming back." "I pray they got that sick bastard," the boss said, rising up to meet the men at the edge of camp. "Well?" he shouted as the first of the men drew near. "Nothing, sir," the man replied. "Once the sun went down, it got too dark to track him. The man, or whatever that was, is gone. He's infected now. If it's a real vampire." That is the end of that story, too. They're very short. I feel like the first one was longer than that. This second one is only 1, 2, like 2 full pages and then like I'd say 3 full pages total long. Um, it's from Ohio in the 1970s. I don't really care for Ohio as a Michigander. That's a state that we typically don't get along with, I suppose. I don't really know why. Something about a border, something about like college sports. I don't like Ohio because it's kind of stinky and there's a lot of factories. Um, Zombies and vampires are almost the same. I totally agree with that. One just longs for blood and one longs for flesh. And typically vampires like gain their intelligence. You've been to Ohio. Why? Hi, Stinky. Welcome. Do you like my stories? They're very short. I didn't think they were going to be so short, but that's okay. That just means we'll fly through this book and then we'll be able to read another one. I do have that, whoa. There's like a weird character. Why does it say that? I have to look at my phone and see. Oh, Bash, look, the fluffy thing was underneath this table. I have to look at my phone and see what the symbol that Bash said was. Wow, Young Eye's still streaming. That's crazy. Let's see. It's loading. Wow, it really is just like a crazy little symbol. Nothing's wrong. You just like you said hi Matt and hi Aiden and there's like a kanji or something in front of it. Okay, well let's read about the Melonheads from Kirtland, Ohio, mid 1970. It was well after midnight when Richard and his buddy Bobby decided to take their girlfriends out to Winsner Road. Rumors of the Melonhead children had enticed them out this way before, but had left them with nothing more than a few goosebumps, caused by open windows on a chilly night. They didn't expect to see anything, but it was something to do, and the girls seemed excited to check out a creepy local legend. Chads. Maybe they're settling. Maybe these girls are ugly. You never know. To each their own. Everybody, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. As the sound of tires strolling over pavement switched to the grumbling crunch of gravel, Richard found an open spot on the side of the road and pulled off. They said Dr. Crow kept orphan kids out here and performed awful experiments on them, he said. I heard they were children with giant heads, said Bobby's girlfriend, Gail. Were they born with giant heads? Jeannie, Richard's girlfriend, asked. Or did Dr. Crow make them that way? Sorry, I think I've got it. Struggle is non-existent. Richard replied, I don't know, but whether they came with giant heads or not, they sure had them when he was done with them. I heard the kids eventually went crazy and killed Dr. Crow, Bobby added. Can't blame them for that, Gail replied. Bobby rolled down his window and gazed across the wooded area. The trees had lost their leaves to the autumn weather, and full moon lit up the open pockets between the thin, reaching branches of the trees. Who even knows if that's all true, Jeannie said as she leaned against Richard's shoulder. Well, lots of people have seen these things over the years, Bobby said. How could there be so many sightings if they aren't out here? My older brother knew some guys who saw one watching them from the side of the road. They followed it into the woods, Gail said. The thing led them to a house where a couple was sitting on the porch, and the man told them he had been a nuclear scientist during World War II. As a result of his work, his children were born with deformed, bulbous heads. The government paid them off to live quietly away from people, but they could never tell anyone about the children. Well, if you ask me, it's just an urban legend, Jeannie said, rolling her eyes. The four sat quietly for a moment, the trees around them A light wind tossed fallen leaves across the ground, causing them to crunch lightly as they hit tree trunks and underbrush. The girls snuggled against the boys to warm up as the cool breeze blew through the open window. A creepy story plus chilly air, the boys had been down this road, literally, a time or two before with other girls, and the combination seemed to work every time. "What's that?" Bobby asked, his voice barely above a whisper. He pointed into the trees. The others followed his gesture. "Oh my gosh," Jeannie gasped. "It's one of them. It's a melon head." Gal leaned forward and peered at the creature. It stood about 4 feet tall beside a tree. Its limbs were unclothed and thin, almost skeletal. Its oversized, hairless head glowed in the moonlight, making it seem even larger and more awkward. It walked towards a small creek and bent down, scooping water into its cupped hands. It took a long drink. Jeannie grabbed Robert's arm. "Get us out of here. What if it sees us?" The creature turned its large head and looked at them. "Oh my gosh, it knows we're here!" she shrieked. Gal joined Jeannie's panicked pleas. "What if it attacks?" Bobby reached over and with trembling hands rolled up the window. Robert was so stunned by what he was looking at that he hardly heard the girls' desperate cries. It wasn't until he felt Jeannie shake his arm that he could comprehend what they were saying. He shifted into drive and whipped the car back in the direction they had come. The girls' voices bordered on hysteria as they begged him to hurry. "Miserable." "Holy cow, man!" Bobby yelled. "We saw one. We actually saw one." Robert shook his head in disbelief, as they got farther away from the frightening small being. He didn't want to believe it because it was too creepy, but he couldn't deny what he had seen. That was the end of the melon heads. My goodness gracious. My feet are asleep from sitting crisscrossed on the ground. What's miserable, Frog? You, the book, or the melon heads? My dog is laying next to me on the floor when she could be laying in the nice comfy bed with Bash. She's loyal to me. The next story is called... Now whenever you hear about melon heads, I think of Cyrax. That's funny. Oh, you think you've heard the melon head story before? Well, that's the thing about a lot of stories. I feel like they're just like sightings, so it makes sense, I guess, that they're all really small. It's just a bummer because the first story that we read, I feel like, was kind of long, or longer than these ones are. That last one was really short, though. This one is called the Enfield Horror. Enfield, Illinois, April 25th, 1973. The night was clear and unseasonably warm for April in Illinois. Mrs. Garrett smiled as her young son, Greg, ran outside, probably on another imaginary adventure. "Shouldn't he be in bed by now?" Mr. Garrett asked, hardly taking his eyes from the television. "I'll call him in during the next commercial. It's such a nice night." Mr. Garrett shrugged and returned his full attention to the program. Only a few minutes passed before the screen door swung open and slammed shut with a bang that pulled Mr. Garrett's attention from the television. "Greg," said Mr. Garrett, his voice tight with irritation, "you can't come in here slamming doors." He turned to look at his son, intending to scold him, but the look on Greg's face turned his irritation to concern. "What's the matter?" he asked, his tone softened a bit. It, it, Greg stammered. "Are you okay?" Mrs. Garrett asked, rushing to her son. "There's a thing. It had claws and huge eyes. It grabbed at me." Greg's teeth began to chatter. Mr. Garrett strode quickly to the door and peered into the darkness. "I don't see anything." "It ran that way," Greg said, pointing. He buried his head into his hands. "Let's get you up to bed," said his mother. She glanced at her husband with a shrug. It wasn't like Greg to make up stories. She shuffled her son's hair and bent Oh, she ruffled her son's hair and bent down to help him with his shoes. What happened to your sneakers? She shrieked. They were torn and shredded across the top. It stepped on my feet, Greg wailed. Look, Mrs. Garrett said to her husband, her voice a panicked whisper. She held up one of Greg's shoes. Mr. Garrett took what was left of the sneaker. I'm calling the police. In the background, their movie broke to a commercial. A voice sang a catchy jingle. Lil McDaniel cheerfully sang along with the fun commercial song. When do Mom and Dad get home? Asked her brother Henry, coming in from the kitchen. Fruit fly. Fruit fly in the house. Not sure, said Lil. She flipped off the television, shocking the room into silence. Probably any minute, which means we should be getting ready for bed. I can't believe we wasted the whole night watching that stupid show. I should have gone to Greg's house. You know you can't leave the house when Mom and Dad are gone. Quit complaining, just hurry up and get to bed before they get home. Why are you bossing me around? I'm almost a teenager, Henry said. You're only a year older than me, Lil replied. A bang from the bedroom startled them both. What was that? Asked Lil. I don't know, said Henry. He went down the hall, peering into the dark room. Turn on the light, Lil said behind him. He felt along the wall until his hand found the switch. The light revealed a mess that their mother had made earlier that evening trying to find the right outfit to wear to the PTA meeting. But there was nothing in the room that could account for the noise they heard. A soft scratching sound came from the window. Do you hear that? Asked Lil. Yeah, answered Henry. It sounds like something is scratching on the AC. It's probably just a cat or a squirrel, he reasoned as he neared the window that held the air conditioning unit. Can you see anything? Asked Lil. Turn out the light, he instructed. He lifted the corner of the curtain to peek outside. Lil hurried to her brother's side and stood on her tiptoes. With their heads close to the AC unit, the scratching sound rattled their ears. The scratching stopped. A creature's face appeared on the other side of the glass, peering back at them. That is not a cat, Lil shrieked. She ran from the window. It's got big, pink eyes. It's trying to get in, Henry shouted. Quick, the other windows, close them. Lil raced to her bedroom and slammed her window with a bang that seemed to shake the walls around her. Lock the front door, she shouted. Struggling with these pages always. Henry ran down the hall. Lil rushed to Henry's room. Tripping on a baseball bat in the middle of the room, she clambered toward the window, reaching it at the same time as the creature. Shrieking, she slammed the window shut as the monster's talon-like claws reached up. The beast sliced through the screen and tapped at the glass. Lil stared, her eyes fixed on the monster. Its hiss was loud enough to hear through the closed window. Call Mom and Dad, she yelled as she ran to the kitchen. Henry was already at the phone, looking for the number that his mother had scribbled into a notebook. The handset trembled in his hand as he twisted the first number into the rotary. The seconds it took to spin the numbers seemed to take minutes. As he pointed a shaking finger clumsily into the next number at the knob on the front door began to shake. That was followed by a loud pounding. Lil and Henry looked at each other in horror. It's trying to get in, Lil screamed hysterically. Open this door, shouted their father. It's Mom and Dad, said Henry, dropping the handset as he ran to the door. We have to let them in. Quick, before it gets them. Tears blurred Lil's eyes as her fingers fumbled with the lock. Henry shoved her out of the way and did it himself. The door flew open as their father stormed in with their mother behind. Both had scowls on their face. Hurry, said Lil. Get in fast. She pulled her mother by the hand, and Henry shut the door and locked it again. Tell me why the front door was locked, Mr. Daniel demanded. What's wrong, Lillian? Mrs. Daniel asked at the very same time. There's something out there, something that's trying to get in, said Lil. Mrs. McDaniel turned her scowl towards her husband. I told you not to let them watch that movie last week. But this is real, said Henry. We both saw it. Something is out there trying to get into the house. You're lucky you got in alive. It has sharp claws, and it hissed at me, Lil whispered with a shiver. There's nothing out there, said their father. The words were barely out of his mouth when the scratching came from the front door. What the? Mr. McDaniel reached for the knob. No, shouted Lil and Henry together. It's probably just a cat, their father said, ignoring their pleas. He pulled the door open. Standing before him was a creature like he'd never seen before. Its clawed hands reached towards him as it hissed. He slammed the door shut and secured the lock before running towards his bedroom. Lil and Henry stood rooted in horror beside their mother, whose body trembled as she wrapped her arms protectively around their shoulders, never taking her eyes off the door. Yeah, I wish I had like a little fireplace behind me. Wouldn't that make it even more cozy? No problem though, Frog. I should read out loud more. I think it would help me say the right words. Because sometimes I don't do that. So I kind of wish that the stories were a little longer, but it is what it is. This one's longer than the last three, so. Their father returned with a pistol in one hand and a flashlight in the other. Henry, hold this light for me, he said, extending the flashlight to his son. Classic dad moment. Hold this flashlight. Ay. Fathers. Pfft. Henry took it, flipped it on, and held it over his father's shoulder as he stood terrified behind his dad. That's true. There is a lot of cognitive benefits to reading out loud, and there's a lot of benefits to reading not out loud too, but out loud is pretty good. And reading out loud with nobody to listen feels kind of funny, so here we are. Mr. McDaniel steadied the gun in his hand and pulled the door open. The creature stood about 12 feet away from the porch. It turned and looked back at them. Its gray skin seemed to glow in the dim moonlight. Its wide, pink eyes were as bright as the beam of the flashlight. The creature jumped forward with a hiss, its little arms outstretched and tail and claws stretching at the air. Henry recoiled at the sight of the creature moving towards them, strangely on 3 legs. 3 legs, though. Henry's father aimed the pistol and fired. Bang! The creature jumped back with a howl. It leaned forward on its 3rd leg and hissed. Leaned forward on its 3rd leg. That's hilarious. Henry's father fired again. Bang! The monster turned and ran, an awkward, loping hop run, as 2 more shots rang out. The beast disappeared into the darkness. Mr. McDaniel slammed the door shut and turned to his wife. Call the police, he said, his voice unsteady. Man, this one just keeps going. Oh, I spoke too soon, but anyways. Tell me again what the caller said, State Trooper James Masser asked his partner. His partner laughed loudly. You heard it right, Jimmy. A 3-legged creature with glowing pink eyes tried to get into their house. We always get the fun ones, Jim said with a shrug as he pulled into the driveway. Gravel crunched underneath the car as it made its way towards the house. See anything glowing? He asked his partner. Jim shook his head and laughed as they got out of the car. He adjusted his belt and put his hand on his firearm. He wasn't afraid of any monster lurking in the shadows, but he'd learned that, in odd calls like this, the caller was probably the one to fear. Together, the troopers climbed to the steps of the front porch. His partner rapped on the door. Mr. McDaniel, he shouted, we're here to talk about what you saw. The door opened and Mr. McDaniel peered nervously over the men's shoulders, a look of genuine concern on his face. Come in. We don't want to talk out here. His voice dropped to a whisper, in case it comes back. The officer stepped inside. Mrs. McDaniel gestured towards the tidy kitchen. A pistol and a flashlight on the table were the only things that seemed out of place. Come in, officers, she said. Can I get you some coffee? No thanks, ma'am, said Jim, taking a small notebook from his pocket. Do you mind if we ask a few questions? Mr. McDaniel sat in the chair beside his wife in a small living room off the kitchen. Lil and Henry sat on the couch, frozen in place, watching the officers intently. Mr. McDaniel, why don't you tell us what happened? Jim said, still standing. At the invitation, Mr. McDaniel's words rushed out. We came home from a meeting. The door was locked. We never locked the door. When the kids let us in, they said a monster was trying to get into the house. Sorry, I have to flip the page, and it's very hard for me to. I didn't believe them at first, but then something started scratching at the door. I got my .22 and I shot at it. I know I hit it once, but it ran off. Jim made notes in his books. In his book. Can you tell me what it looked like? It had gray skin, no fur, and big pink eyes that glowed like flashlights. Jim stopped writing and looked up. She can't wait for me on the floor anymore. She's getting old. She's retreating to bed. I don't know if you heard her little tip-tappy toes on the floor. Her nails are really long. She doesn't like her feet being touched. How did you get set? Yeah. Jim stopped writing and looked up. It took all of his effort not to smile. How did you get such a good look at it in the dark? Asked his partner. Were the eyes that bright? I had a flashlight too. About how tall was it? Jim asked. Probably 4 to 5 feet. Have you been drinking tonight? Asked Jim's partner. No, said Mr. McDaniel, the frustration evident in his voice. We were at a school meeting. He looked at his children. They saw it too. It was trying to get in through the window with the air conditioner, said Lil. It had short arms, but it was tall enough to reach the bedroom window. It had 3 legs, Henry added. Jim flipped his notebook closed without writing anything else. Okay, folks, we'll go outside and take a look around. Be careful, whispered Lil. It might still be out there. Don't worry, we'll be careful. His partner gave a wink. They went to the front porch. Mr. McDaniel followed them out the door. Look here, Mr. McDaniel said to Jim. On the door, and here on the side. He pointed at the deep scratch marks etched in the door and the frame. It did that. Jim traced his hand along the deep grooves. Huh, look at this, he said to his partner. Sure looks like something was trying to get in, said his partner. Maybe it left some track prints, said Jim. He took his flashlight from his belt. Which way did you say it went? He asked Mr. McDaniel. Toward the train tracks, Mr. McDaniel pointed into the darkness. We'll take a look and be right back, said Jim's partner. Together, the officers crossed the driveway, with Jim's flashlight pointed at the ground. They hadn't gone far when they saw the tracks. Jim bent to study them. 2 big prints and a single smaller one just in the front. Look, he said to his partner with a shiver. 6 toes on each. Do you know of any living creature that has 6 toes and 3 legs? No, his partner said. Maybe they weren't making all of this up. And that is the end of that movie. That's so funny. It's not a movie. It's a story. This one's going to be exciting for me. Traverse City is the place of it. That's where I lived a lot of my life. Which I guess that's probably doxing, but we've talked about Traverse City before, so I feel like it's not that big of a deal. And also, like, what are you going to do? Can't dox me now because I doxed myself. This one's about the dog man. Beppis has 6 toes and 3 legs. Maybe that's how she plays Slay the Spire so well. Alrighty. Let's dig in. Michigan Dog Man. Oh, should I read it like the strange facts? You ready? Michigan Dog Man, Traverse City, Michigan, April 1987. I don't think Bash is listening, but I think he would really like to hear me say that. Anyways. JT is a dog man? LOL. Be nice to JT. Actually, I don't care if you're nice to JT. He can handle it. He's not sensitive. Alright, 1987. John passed the oncoming car, and then he flipped We're gonna restart that. You and JT are besties? That's good. I like JT. John passed the oncoming car, and then he flipped the brights of his pickup back on and glanced at the dashboard clock. The drive from Traverse City back to his home in Luther shouldn't take too long. He figured he'd be home before midnight. I just don't like the way that Darnell talks. It gives me cancer, that's all. I said that already. It's okay. I mean, she can talk however she wants, and I'm gonna hate it if it's stupid. That's all. People hate things I do too. Look at fucking Dev Pike chimping out. Because I like have a job. I don't know. Why does when you type it has a little Japanese kanji in the front? But Bash had a message that said that earlier too. What does that mean? Anyways. This is a short one too. It's 3 pages. Kind of 2 pages almost, but really. Anyways. That song came on the radio again. That one that had started as an April Fool's joke, cooked up by 2 radio DJs, and had the whole town of Traverse City worked out about the legendary monster Dog Man. John listened as the song told about the sightings and legends. He couldn't believe that the hoax had earned national attention. The song concluded with these haunting words. Somewhere in the North Woods darkness, a creature walks upright, and the best advice you may ever get is never to go out at night. John shivered. It was the first time he'd heard the song while driving down a Michigan country road at night. In this setting, it had a disturbing effect. John was about to change the station when the radio host's voice came on. Jack O'Malley got an interesting call that came in after he played that song this morning. Stay tuned during this quick commercial break and we'll play the clip when we come back. John sighed and decided to keep listening. He suffered through the string of commercials. He'd missed the morning show and Jack O'Malley was his favorite. But by the time the commercials were done, he had almost forgotten what he was waiting for, until he heard Jack O'Malley's voice. "Hello, caller, you're on with O'Malley. What did you want to tell us?" The wheezing voice of an elderly man answered. "That song chills me to the bones. I saw it. Many years ago, I saw the dog monster." O'Malley chuckled. "Thanks for the call, sir. For all you folks listening out there, remember, the legend says the dog man appears every 7 years. Keep your eyes open." John laughed along with O'Malley, and this time he did change the channel. Luther, Michigan, July 1987. John went around to the back of the truck and filled his arms with grocery bags, while his wife went, "Hi, puppy." Lita's here. Can you see her in frame? You must be able to if she was close enough to lick me. Lita, what do you want to say to the people? Here, speak. No words. I don't know if you could hear her licking. Maybe that was like puppy ASMR. I didn't want her to like lick my fuzzy thing off. What does bitrate mean? Dictionary Frog, tell me in the chat what bitrate means. And we'll continue on. John went around to the back of the truck and filled his arms with grocery bags, while his wife went ahead to open the front door. He was already on his way behind her when he heard her scream. From inside, their black lab chief started barking. "What's the matter?" he asked, hurrying to her. "Look," she said. "Look at all of those marks. Someone was trying to get into the house." John settled the grocery bags on the porch and studied the marks. The entire door frame was destroyed, marked with jagged scratches and splintered wood. Look, it's over here at the window too. She pointed at the front window. John studied that spot too. And gross! It looked like there's slobber all along here. Even though she hadn't actually touched it, she yanked her hand away from the window as if she had. Look at this, John pointed. Oh, he said as he pointed to a tuft of black fur caught in the splintered wood. What do you think it was that did this? She asked. A bear, maybe? John shuddered. Bear marks don't look like that, and I can't think of any animals that do. Maybe it was the dog-man monster. Frog, you did not tell me what bit rate is. Bite rate? Here, I'll type it. Bite rate. Tell me what that means. I don't know. I don't know. Okay. This one's from 2006. Oh my gosh, we have to get through this one. What does latency mean? Oh my goodness. It says the stream's current byte rate is higher than the recommended. It has a high delay then? Whatever, I guess it doesn't really matter. My phone, my show always has a delay, I feel like, anyways. Okay. This one is The Beast of Bray Road. This is what the artwork on it looks like. Yeah, still see me and hear me, that's all that matters. Okay. Beast of Bray Road, Erin, Wisconsin, November 9th, 2006. Congrats on escaping grooming. Not everybody is so lucky. Famous story. It's just a small one too, though, so. Well, it's quite a few pages.